Well, I've been working on this for a while now and think I've got it right for you. A homemade workstand. The basic idea is already on the internet, but we've made some improvements. It's made from extremely available materials, it's cheap to make, it's easy to make without compromising build quality. Not only that, it fits your road bikes and all sizes of your mountain bike, and in quick release and through axle in both models. And it also folds up for easy storage. So pop along to your hardware store and get a Sawhorse. This beastie. If you can buy one, that's good, that's all you need. Unfortunately, I've got to buy two, but anyhow, sometimes how you got to buy them. So just come down to your local bike shop and grab a quick release axles. Like that. So one of them. So here's our cheap Sawhorse from the hardware store. Great, it's got steel legs and the bits that we need. But the piece of wood here is too wide. Around the bottom bracket area we're going to have to skinny some off there. Otherwise the chainring and the cranks will hit. And these holes here are in the wrong position for the holes that we're going to drill to put the legs in a different spot. And when we later on drill holes in the side as well, we don't want to weaken everything because these holes will be in the way as well. So I'm going to take this piece of wood off and replace it with an even easier to source piece of wood. It's a small 70 by 35 piece of wood. You can pick this up really cheap. I've got this length which will do 3 of these Sawhorses for only like $6. So you get it from the garden section. It's really cheap to purchase as well. So we're going to cut some of this and use that. So going ahead with that piece of timber, mark in from one end 900 millimeters and draw a square line across the face. And then cut along that line. So with the 900mm piece, measure halfway across its face, so that'll be 35 millimeters, make a mark, and the same on the other end. Now join those two marks. Here I'm just using a leftover piece of wood, makes a nice straight edge. So mark it, and now you've effectively split the wood down the middle. So now write front on one end of the piece of wood and rear on the other end. That'll be the front and the rear end of your stand. From the rear end, measure in 265 millimeters and make a mark there. Then from your front edge, measure in 185 millimeters, make a mark, and also 310 millimeters and make a mark. And copy those two measurements to both sides of the wood. So here's one side, 185, 310, then turn the piece of wood over to the other side and the same thing, 185 and 310. So all the marks should line up. And now join all 3 marks for your 185 on your sides and your face, and all 3 marks for your 310. It's good to use a square, keeps things nice and accurate. So these 2 marks will be your axle holders for your front forks. Now just using a small piece of cardboard, mark in from one edge 18 millimeters. Now mark down from the face that 18 millimeters that you put on the piece of cardboard there. Here I'm just using a block of wood just to hold it nice and square. So it's important to get the 18 millimeters pretty much exact, because you'll be doing the same on the other side. So flip the piece of wood over and mark down from the face again 18 millimeters. Right, it's time to get our Sawhorse and remove both the front and the rear legs. So those legs will be going on our new piece of wood. So you need to mark the bolt holes from the leg brackets. If your bracket comes apart from the legs like this one, even better, just put the bracket on the piece of wood and mark the holes. So for the front legs, put the bracket right up to the edge of the timber and mark. And for the rear legs, get the inner hole of the leg bracket on your 265mm mark and mark the other bracket hole. To help your drill bit start exactly on the spot you want, you can punch the mark. Here I'm just using a Phillips head screwdriver. So that's the marks for the leg brackets, front and rear. And do the same for the marks on the sides of the piece of wood. That was for your axle holders. Now choose a drill bit, the same diameter as your leg bolt. Now you can go ahead and drill those punched marks for the front and the rear leg brackets. Now we're going to drill the holes for the axle holders, and firstly they'll be pilot holes, so you only need a small drill bit, between 2 and 5mm will do. Choose a flat and level surface, turn your piece of wood to the side and then put your drill bit on the punch mark. Make sure you get a drill bit nice and straight to the edge, so 90 degrees. Now you turn your piece of wood over and drill in from the other side, and as you drill down you should feel that you'll drop into the hole that you previously drilled. So hopefully you've now got two nice straight holes through the sides of your wood at those two marks. Now we're going to drill those holes a lot bigger, so we need a spade bit. If you don't have the spade bit and don't feel like buying one, perhaps you can borrow one from someone. You're only drilling through soft wood, so you'll return the spade bit in good condition anyhow. The spade bit has a leading edge, so it should follow that pilot hole you drilled. And the same thing, when you drill in on the second side, you'll feel when it hits the opposing hole. Once you've drilled the two holes, go up and down with the spade bit a bit, make the holes nice and straight and clean all the way through. Good, that's the axle holes. Now while you've got the spade bit in, you can make small countersinks on the face side for the heads of the leg bracket bolts. You with me so far? So you got two holes here for your front legs, two holes here for your rear legs, and two holes here on the side for the axle of your bicycle front forks. One more hole to drill in this piece of wood. Get your leg bracket and measure from the rearmost hole another bracket length hole. Drill bit the same size as that bolt again, and just drill straight through. You won't be needing to countersink this hole either. So this is riser tube from your local hardware store, usually in the gardening section, and it's quite often it's got a thread on both ends. But we're not going to use the thread, so we're going to cut the threads off and just make two 100mm sections. That's all you need, two of them. So let's go and cut the riser tube. So measure and mark 100mm, and you'll need two pieces. Try and make the ends of the pieces that you're cutting as square as possible. Here I'm using the side of the vise, which happens to be at a nice 90-degree angle. So line up your marks exactly with the edge of the vise, and the saw should follow through nicely. And make sure the tubing is level with the top of the vise, otherwise you'll be cutting at an angle. So you need two pieces like that. So clean the ends of the poly tube up, the 200mm pieces, just cleaned up, and on one end just put a bit of a bevel so that you can get it through the piece of wood. It glides through a lot easier. So there's a little bit of a bevel on that edge. It needs to be on one edge. Right, it's time to put your riser pieces into the holes in the side for your front forks. So it needs to fit quite tight in there, but not so tight that you can't get it through. So at the moment it's just too tight. So what you can do is get a file and just round it out, file it through, whatever you need to do to widen that hole so that this gets through quite firmly. You'll be hammering the tubing through and out the other side of the piece of wood. So don't just put it on a flat surface, prop your piece of wood up on something first. Use soap and water. It'll help the tubing slide through the holes, and when it's dry it'll grab nicely. So put some soap and water in the holes first on both sides and then around the tubing itself. Use something soft like a rubber or a wooden mallet so it doesn't damage the poly tube. A hammer will damage it. Now just make sure the same amount of tubing protrudes on each side equally and you're done. So once you've gotten that far, just give it a bit of a sand, especially around the bolt holes. Make sure there's no little bits of wood sticking out. Make sure it's really good. And on the rear area here, just give the face just a bit of a sand. Doesn't have to be perfect. Makes it look nice too. Easy part now, put the front legs on the front piece of wood, so bolts in first. Washers on, nuts on, and then you can tighten them right up because your front legs will be staying on there now. Right, front legs in, now turn around. Get the other legs now. So this is the rear, and you get the leg, and you put that first hole there in the middle hole. So the last hole of your stand facing out in the middle hole that you've drilled. So it's that one. Middle hole, back through, washer, nut. Right, don't tighten it up yet. So that's that bit. So that's your rear leg. Time to put in the extra bolts. The one toward the rear is 75mm and the 65mm one toward the centre has an extra nut. And they're the holes that they'll be going in. Now get this bolt, the one with the extra nut in there. Take the bits off. Take the extra nut off. Okay, so put that, this is the rear leg, remember, through there. And then put that nut on there and do that up. And it will go into that recess in there. So hold it and you do it up at the same time. Right, now you can do them both up. Right. Right, all done. So that sticks out like that, but the nut is flush. Actually, it's a little bit recessed below, so it's smooth. Right. Time to make the slider plate, and for this I really did use an old piece of pallet. Anyhow, the size is 75mm wide by 15 deep. From one end, measure 400mm and mark it. Again, using a square to keep the line nice and straight. And we're going to split this one in half by measurement as well, so that makes it 37.5mm. So mark that on both ends. And join those measurements with a straight line. Now from that same end, we're going to make 4 measurements. Firstly, 130mm, then 225, then 260, and finally 350mm. And to make it easy again, write front up near the 400mm line and rear down at the beginning of the piece of wood. Punch mark those measurements for our drill bit. Now you don't have to mark these particular bits on your piece of wood, but these elongated sections that I'm drawing here will become cutouts. So firstly, cut at the 400mm line. So using a drill bit the same size as that bolt again, drill a series of holes close to each other along those straight lines that we drew. So the whole idea is just to make a rough slot. So there we go, that's it for the slot on the rear. Now do the same with the front slot. And it should end up looking something like this. Now use a rough wood file and make the edges of the slots nice and straight and fairly smooth. Then you can make those edges a bit smoother again using a fine file. All done. Now let's see if it fits the stand. So that's it, that's the idea. So the slider piece moves along the body of the stand between the bolts. Now you don't have to do this, but I'm just going to put a bevel on the front edge. It just makes it look nice. There's the nice beveled edge, and we've rounded the corners off. Now get your sliding piece of wood, sit the front part over that nut there, and you can just put the large washer and wing nut on. Don't do it up tight yet. And then get your other bolt, that one there, take that off, that one off, and you can just stick that through like that, and underneath put the washer, the wing nut, and don't do that up tight yet, just leave it loose. Right, and that's it. So you should be able to tighten that up, and it doesn't move. Undo it, slide, tighten it up, and it goes wherever you want. Right, over to making our quick release axle for the stand, and you need either a T or an inline barbed 13mm joiner. And using a drill bit the same diameter as your quick release axle, we're going to drill through the joiner. If you can, use a T joiner because it's easier to hold in your hand while you're drilling. Make sure your quick release axle fits nice and snugly into those barbed ends, both ends. And then cut them off at the junction, as you can see here. You can use a hacksaw or you can use a sharp knife. Right, so that's what you want, 2 of them. Now simply slip those barbed ends on the quick release axle. That's the barb pointing outwards. So it looks like that. And your front quick release skewer should just go straight through like it normally does with the front hub. Right, all done. Makes a handy bench to sit on too. Now you'll find with some bikes with disc brakes, the caliper, the disc brake caliper is quite low, and this mountain bike it's quite low and it'll hit the piece of wood. So you just need to make a little cutout to facilitate the caliper. So put your front forks exactly where the axle is and mark just slightly larger than the caliper itself on the piece of wood there. Now just cut out that piece of wood, and again I just find it easy to drill a straight line and join the dots, so to speak. Using a saw to just cut in from the edge, file to round the edges, and finally sanding to make it nice and smooth. Make sure everything fits now. Yep, very good. Right, all done. Get your quick release and put in whichever one you want to use. At the moment we're going to try the road bike, so it's the shorter one. Chuck the quick release in and get your road bike. Set the bottom bracket on the back and do your quick release up like normal. Oh, done. Then you can just align your bottom bracket so that the slidey bit, it doesn't touch your tyre of course, but not too far forward. You need to have something for your bottom bracket to sit on. I'll do. Tightened up. Done. Really good. And you can still move your bike forward like that, up and down, if you need to. And so for your mountain bike, this is a 29er. You put the quick release in the front. Kookaburras. That's Australia. Right, put it on. And done. Adjust your bottom bracket so it's right, which it is. Make sure there's nothing in the time. Beautiful. Last but not least, through axle. So, here we go. This is a road bike through axle this time. This is actually the easiest because you don't have to adjust anything. You just chuck it in, do it up, and bang, it's done. Make sure it's sitting on right, a little bit further back. Beautiful. So the last thing we're going to do is now put a piece of foam, nice thick grabby foam on there, just a piece there, cut a piece and glue it on, and that'll help grip your bottom bracket and protect your bottom bracket as well.
So here I've painted the stand first before we stick the pad on. The pad comes right up to the cup head bolt and goes to the very back of the slide plate. So mark that and you can cut the pad. Depending on what sort of foam you're going to use, scissors may do the job, or in this case a serrated kitchen knife makes a nice square cut. Apply the glue and spread it to all the edges and corners and just press it on the stand. Remove any excess glue and just let it dry.
Well, that's it for the homemade workstand. I hope you get pleasure out of making and using your own. If you have any problems understanding my explanations in the video, I tried to make the video as short as possible, but nevertheless let us know in the comments below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you've got any ideas on improving any aspects or the design of the stand, also put in the comments below. We can all benefit from that. That'd be great. If you're not sure about certain measurements, rather than go through the whole video again and look for the certain measurements, I'll put them on OzCycle on Facebook. So have a look there. I'll put all the important information on there in picture form. So that's it. If you're going to paint your stand, hopefully maybe you'll come up with a better colour than my boring blue. Cheers for now. Wonder if the gears work. Oh, mate. Yep.